Good morning, members. Welcome to this meeting of Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee, which has been live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on our council's website and for public listening. You're all aware of the good practice guidance, so I won't run through it. And you're all aware of it, the new consideration when we have to address substantive amendments and motions. We'll follow that process as well. This meeting. There is new guidance as well because we're in an election period. So we've got our council's pre-election period guidance, which was emailed to you on 12th of February and again on the 5th of March. As mentioned in the emails, the guidance is there to ensure that as a council we operate in a politically neutral way in the run-up to the election. The pre-election period begins on Monday, 16th of March, and ends 8th of May 2026. And in terms of the guidance, I will highlight the following. Quote, councils are prohibited by Section 2 of the Local Government Act 1986 from publishing any material which appears to be designed to affect public support for a political party. Publicity is defined very widely. It includes any communication in whatever form addressed to the public at large or to a section of the public. And it's worth further highlighting that publicity also includes the streaming of meetings online. These obligations apply all year round, but are particularly sensitive during a pre-election period. And we are joined, happy to announce that we are joined this morning by Ward Youth Councillor Naomi Scott. So welcome, Naomi. First item of the agenda is the sit-down, and apologies. Claire, would you like to run through that first, please?
Thank you, Chair. I can advise we've got 9 members present this morning, 4 of which are on Teams, being Councillors Karen Crothers, Lynn Davis, Sean Marshall and Stephen Thompson. I've been advised there's 2 apologies this morning from Councillors Ian Crothers and Gail McGregor. Remaining members all present here in Annan, and Youth Councillor present on Teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Any declarations of interest or statements of connection? Councillor Mail.
The connection, Chair. Item 9, Community Asset Transfer, Langham Old School. I was a board member and chair of that for several years, but for the last 2 years I have had no connection to it. So it's just a connection.
We've noted that. Any other ones? No, I can't see any other statements of connection or declaration of interests. So we're on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting of 26 November. Are we happy to approve? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 4 is a welcome report from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Annandale and Eskdale Area Performance Report. Our first report is from this Fire and Rescue Service, quarters 1 and 2 of 25-26. It presents a broadly positive picture for Annandale and Eskdale, highlighting strong performance, continued community engagement, and encouraging reductions in several key areas of risk. I'd like to welcome Station Commander Billy McSkimming, who is in the hall, to answer any members' questions or address any comments. So I'll open the floor to members for questions and comments. Councillor Drybrough.
Thanks very much, Chair, and again, thanks for your report coming in. I hope you enjoy the new job that you've got, and obviously here in Annandale and Eskdale, we're always interested in what our fire and service crews are up to. Just maybe one question, and it's probably not written in the report. With Gretna, I believe we're now up to 9 firefighters in Gretna, and I just wonder if there's anything planned to have any more recruitment days for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it's been a nice, smooth transition into the Annandale and Eskdale area. It's been a good meeting all the crews and going round all the stations. With regards to Gretna specifically, Gretna held a couple opening, an open night last week and at the weekend. Unfortunately, it didn't attract any new kind of members. We are always looking to try and recruit, and we're looking to try and get more members in. Currently we're looking at employers in the area to see if we can potentially get some additional crew members released from employers. We have recently had a new crew commander temporarily acting up in the unit, so that's going to provide additional cover with the likes of incident command and additional skills. He's recently just passed and he's just currently acting up, so hopefully that will help with the availability in the area. Thank you.
Mr. Drybrough. I've got Councillor Marshall online.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a question with regards, thanks for the report. It's just a question in relation to page 21, which is the summary, and it actually itemises the top 10 incident types. And I see that false alarms are still the #1, kind of the highest incident type. And I know that has reduced because I think there used to be a lot of false alarms from schools, and I think I've asked a question before, and that has improved. So just a little bit more detail on, what kind of premises or areas do false alarms occur predominantly, and also does that require the fire service to attend these locations at every occasion, or is there some other way of dealing with it?
Thanks for your question, Councillor. In regards to the UFAS, in July 2023, the UFAS policy was changed, so we no longer automatically respond to fire alarms in, for instance, offices, shops, factories, leisure facilities, but we will always respond to false alarms with a sleeping risk. Predominantly, a lot of the false alarms that we do attend are to do with cooking. The service will automatically attend alarms where there is are triggered by, for instance, heat detectors or perhaps more than one smoke detector. That won't require a manual activation from the premise itself. The service will still attend those. For your second part of the question, the duty holders that are in the kind of premise, they'll have a more, the onus is on them to investigate initially, so the likes of the schools, predominantly before we would initially have turned up to that, the schools now have to investigate to make sure that it is an actual fire alarm warrants the service attending. It's really the changes in the UFAS policy that put it back, kind of onus on the kind of duty holder themselves. If that's answered your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marshall. I've got Naomi Scott, our youth councillor, wishes to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. What I would like to ask is I want to put your attention to item number 6 in the fire report, page 27, about how the fire service is pairing with the youth justice system. I was wondering, what exactly are you doing with young people to educate them not to set fires like woodland stuff and properties? Thank you.
We're just clarifying the question in the page number. Is it page 27, Naomi?
Yes, it's page 27 in the fire report.
37.
27.
27, that's great. Just give us a second and the report author will get to that page and then answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. With regards to the deliberate fires, we are a service. We continue to work with police, Scotland, Education and Youth Justice to address these. So this may result if a young person is consistently setting fires, getting access to the fire settle support and education programme. It's delivered by our community action team, who have received extensive training in this area to try and adjust the behaviours without. The aim is more kind of educating the persons as opposed to kind of punishing, and they've had a lot of success in the past working with these types of individuals.
You happy with that answer, Naomi? Or would you like to come back on it?
Can I just quickly say, are you guys planning to do things in secondary schools to raise more awareness to young folk about the risks of setting fires to like properties and woodland spaces?
William?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, the Community Safety Engagement Team are consistently going into schools and providing information. For instance, all primary 7 pupils across Annandale and Eskdale attend Operation Safety in Dumfries, which is a programme of work that's continued over 3 weeks from September to October. This partnership involves not just the fire service, but Police Scotland and the Scottish Ambulance Service are raising awareness of issues in relation to safety. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Naomi, for your question. Thank you. No more questions, I don't think, so we can go to the recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report for Annandale and Eskdale from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for 25-26, quarter 1 and 2 as detailed in the appendix. Happy that we've scrutinised that? Yeah, and thank you very much, William McSkimming, for your report and answering our questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 5 on the agenda is the Social Work Services Director Area Performance Report, 1st of April to 30 September 2025. So the report reflects on the new performance management agreements agreed by Council in March 2025, giving area committees a stronger role in scrutinising local delivery and ensuring that our service remain responsive to the needs of our communities. This is the first iteration of the new approach, bringing forward detailed analysis of the success measures and projects that members selected in September. It provides both quantitative data and qualitative insight across children and families, justice and resettlement, and adult services, housing options, and homelessness service. Heather Sloan, Sarah McGarva, Barbara Aiken and Keith Forrest are on teams to answer any members' questions or address any member comments. Officers online, do you have any thing you would like to add to the report? No?
No, not from me, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I can open up to members for questions and comments. Mr. Ryborough.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I'm just looking at the tables in 4.42, homelessness and families and temporary accommodation. I'm just wondering if this has changed any in the last couple of months, because this is for 25th, April 25 to September 25. We're seeing an increase in homelessness and families who need temporary accommodation and try to get them out of there. Has there been any change?
Who would like to come on?
Yeah. Yes, I'll come into that one. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. In terms of the numbers coming through the homeless service, we have seen a drop this year of about 10% so far in the number of applications that we are actually taking. However, that's not kind of translating into the temporary accommodation at this point in time. So the numbers in temporary accommodation are remaining steady at this point. And there's a number of reasons for that in terms of throughput through the system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that one. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, mine's a similar question, but probably drilling down a little bit into Annandale and Eskdale, and particularly as a member of Annandale South Ward, that's where the concern is. It's not really as prevalent in the other parts of Annandale and Eskdale. So I'm just wondering, because there's nothing in the report that addresses maybe what we're doing about the increase in, if you look from 1st of April to the 30th of June, if you look at the first indicator, the number of homeless families in temporary accommodation, there was 8 in total and 7 were in Annandale South, which represents about 80% of Annandale and Eskdale and 20% D&G wide. And then in the next period, 1st of July to the 30th of September, that has went up to 10, so 100% in Annandale South, and it represents about 25% across Dumfries and Galloway. So I know that, you know, the area probably the main area within that is Annan and probably Eastriggs, which is about 85% of the population within Annandale South. But I'm just wondering, when there is an area that looks as though its trend is spiking really high, is there anything done, or what can be done to? Is there anything that can be done to actually reduce that? I'm thinking of getting them into permanent residence.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. And in terms of that, I think those measures that we're looking at more reflect where the temporary accommodation is available within Annandale and Eskdale. So the fact that there's the majority of temporary accommodation that we have is within Annan, Eastriggs, Lockerbie. That reflects in those figures. So the people who are presenting may not necessarily be from the Annandale and Eskdale area, who are within those figures. They may have came from Dumfries and been placed in a temporary accommodation in Annandale and Eskdale.
So is there maybe a need for more temporary accommodation, to spread out further across the region?
Yes, I would say there absolutely is, but we have to balance that with the need for permanent accommodation, because if we take more stock into our temporary accommodation, that reduces the availability of permanent accommodation. So it's a bit of a balancing act around that.
Yeah, totally understand that, but it's maybe something that could be looked at.
Yes, it has been looked at actively at the moment.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you for that. I've got Naomi Scott online.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, what support are you giving young people who may be going into temporary accommodation or homelessness? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Naomi. It's a really good question. We do have specialised housing with support for young people. So a young person coming in would hopefully be placed within that, and they would be getting housing support on site within that accommodation. If we also have a youth homelessness pathway and protocol in place, so if a young person comes down, we take a multi-agency approach to that, and we work with other services to ensure the right supports around that young person, and we're ensuring their safety and that we're getting them moved into suitable accommodation as quickly as possible. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any more further questions that anybody would like to ask? Yeah. Councillor Mail.
Just a slight correction, Chair. In pages 40 and 41, the third table should be Annandale East and Eskdale, because we've got Annandale and Eskdale twice. But, so that should just be Annandale East and Eskdale, because it's the third district.
Noted. I'll make that sure that's updated.
Well spotted, Councillor Mail. Yes, thank you for that. Any other questions? I don't have any, so I'd like to thank our representatives from social work for answering our questions today, and we'll go through the recommendations. Members are asked to note the new arrangements for performance and management by area committee as set out in paragraph 4.1, and 2, scrutinise the performance of selected success measures projects for Annandale and Eskdale for 1st of April 25 to 30 September 25 as set out in paragraph 4.4. Happy to note and scrutinise? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for attending our session, ladies. Thank you. We're now on down to section 6, Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing. Director, Area Committee Performance Monitoring Report by Executive Director, Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing. I'm pleased to introduce the report, which provides a comprehensive overview of progress across our schools, youth services, community learning, leisure and wider wellbeing activity for the first half of 25-26. The appendices before us offer a detailed picture of how our services are performing, where we're seeing a strong improvement and where further focus is required. Across our schools, we continue to see positive trends in literacy and numeracy, bringing Annandale and Eskdale broadly in line with the rest of the Feast and Galloway, albeit still behind the national average. Our youth and lifelong learning services remain a vital part of community well-being. The data shows consistent high levels of participation, strong volunteer engagement and impressive outcomes, with over 95% of learners reporting improvement. The report also highlights insight into community safety, where local perception of safety remains high, and into sport and leisure participation, where attendance patterns reflect both changing customer behaviour and ongoing success of our membership model. Alison Chambers, Mark Malloy, Miss McLean and Jessica Burnett are online to support us. So I'll open the floor to members' questions for questions and comments. Councillor Driver is first one again.
I think Alison was wanting to come in there, were you, Alison?
Thank you, Councillor Driver. Yes, it was just to say we've got some additional information we'd like to share perhaps before we take questions from councillors, but I'll be leaded by the Chair. Thank you.
That would be fine, thank you.
So I'd like to welcome both Jess Burnett and Lauren McLean to speak. They're going to speak and give you some more information around bullying, and then some of the story around the Langham story when it comes to positive destinations, and then something around care experience. So I'll ask Jess, who's a Quality Improvement Officer leading in Safeguard at the moment, to share a little bit more information regarding bullying.
Good morning, thank you. It's just to provide an update with regards to the steady and purposeful progress towards developing a robust and respected anti-bullying policy. A draft local authority Respect Me policy has now been created, marking an important step forward in ensuring a consistent and strategic approach across our schools and settings. This draft Respect Me anti-bullying policy is proactively being shared with Respect Me for professional review, demonstrating our commitment to aligning with national guidance and best practice. Further strengthening on our work, colleagues from Respect Me are scheduled to meet with all child protection coordinators on the 10th of June. This session will focus on improving approaches to recording and monitoring bullying incidents, as well as raising awareness of the Respect Me Award. This was already successfully identified and implemented within Dumfries and Galloway in a number of our settings, where we engaged with the pilot, and is now a national push from Scottish Government. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'll now hand over to Lauren McLean, Head Teacher of Langham All Through.
Morning everyone. I just wanted to share a little bit of information about how we're achieving positive destinations at Langham Academy. We've actually seen a change in the trend over the last 4 years. So from 2020, we had roughly 36% of our pupils going into higher education. In 2024, that changed to 21%, and the shift is around about our young people choosing to go into employment locally instead. So from 2022, our employment stats were 31% of our school leavers were going to employment, and in 2024, that had risen to 47%, which is a huge rise, particularly given against the national statistics of 23% of leavers go into employment. We would attribute this positive shift to the work that we do with our local community partners, such as the Stevenson Trust, Langham Alliance, Buccleuch Estates, Taris Valley Nature Reserve and Creation Mill, to name a few. We work really closely with our local partners to do mock interviews, to run a careers fair, and also to offer work experience. And as a result of that positive work with our community, we are seeing many more of our young people are choosing to leave us at the end of S4, S5 and S6 to go into the positive destination of employment within the community, which is a great story because we know that they're keeping their skills within the community, and many of those young people also have gone into that pathway through doing a foundation apprenticeship, which we know is a higher level equivalent qualification, which is a mix of learning in school and doing some work-based learning as well. And through that avenue, we're finding that a lot of our young people are making connections and building relationships with local community partners. So we're really pleased with the work that we're doing with our local partners within the community. And I know certainly within our secondary head teachers group, we endeavour to share all of the best practice that we see within each of our settings. And it's certainly been something that we talked at length about with our secondary head teacher colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll hand back to Jessica for a little bit more information around care experience in the senior phase.
Thank you. Following the successful joint service inspection in relation to children on compulsory supervision orders, the work of our SEAT, so that's our care experience education team, as well as our creation of a care experience dashboard centrally for all authority, we've successfully identified all senior phase pupils, that's S4, 5 and 6, who are currently at risk of leaving school without a literacy or numeracy destination. We're working directly with head teachers to ensure appropriate supports are in place and extending the care education's teams' capacity to provide targeted support and intervention to try and mitigate any care experienced child or young person leaving without literacy or numeracy this year.
Thank you, Chair. I hope that's been useful additional information to yourself and to all elected members.
That has been very useful. Thank you very much for that. And I've got Councillor Dryborough.
I don't know if Mark wants to say anything before we move on.
Thanks, Councillor Driver, and through yourself, Chair, if that's okay.
Good. Thanks, Mark. If you want to say anything.
Just generally across both the Council's Youth Work Service and Lifelong Learning Service, there's a range of provision happening across the Annandale and Eskdale area, and within youth work. In the last couple of months, we've appointed a new youth development worker, Vary Black, who brings a range of experience from another authority and both the third sector and council experience as well. So we're looking forward to seeing how Vary takes forward the work within the area over the coming years. But what you essentially is in front of members today is a very positive picture in terms of the number of volunteers supporting activity within that area.
Thanks, Mark. Eventually to Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at page 64 and 65 on the breakdown for each ward on feeling safe or very safe, and in some cases it's 100%, which is great. But Annandale, East and Eskdale, 96% feel very safe, and 4% feel very unsafe or unsafe. So I'm just wondering what sort of things you're going to be doing in that particular ward to try and improve that situation with regard to advertising, events, things like that.
Would you like to come in for that one?
Thanks, Chair. I'll come in for that. Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Dryburgh. The plan for the year ahead hasn't been finalised, but as we do every year, we'll be partaking in engagement activity in each ward throughout Dumfries and Galloway, and clearly those with a higher, or even if it's just slightly a higher answer regarding unsafe or very unsafe, as a general day-to-day, we'd be looking at having officers in the area, in those areas, essentially as much as we possibly can with our current capacity. Thank you.
Can come back in here. I mean, it's obviously pretty high, people feeling safe and very safe, and you know that's good for us. But thanks, Rob, for that. I think I'm happy with the answer.
Okay, thanks for that. I've got Councillor Jimison.
Thanks, Chair. My first query is just clarification on page 49 and on page 58. We've got 5S and 14S. It seems to cover the same thing, but with a different outcome. I might be reading this wrong, but it's to do with the percentage of P1, P4 and P7 children combined achieving CFE level relevant to their stage of literacy. 5S shows Annandale 71, Dumfries and Galloway 72 and Scotland 75. But if you turn to, if I can, too many, 14S on page 58, we have the same heading, that percentage of P1, P4, P7 children combined achieving CFE level relevant to their stage of literacy. It states it's 30% in 2004-5. Am I picking this up wrong, or are these two different tables covering different things?
I'll come in with that, Councillor Jamieson. So your 5S is all young people, whereas your 14S is your looked after children?
Yeah, spot on. Thank you very much for that clarification. My next question will still be directed at Alison. Page 53, get to my pages. This is a table on essentially positive destinations. A&E, I know this is just Annan Academy because of the timings, but with 82% positive destinations, and in Dumfries and Galloway 92, and in national average is 92. As I say, this only covers Annan Academy, if I'm correct.
Annandale and Eskdale.
Yeah. But according to this, the destination that only includes Annan Academy pupils. Page 53, 12S.
So 12S, so if I can just come in there, Councillor Jamieson, so that's Annandale and Eskdale, and it's your quintile ones that we're just looking at in that data? It says data only includes, you're correct to say Annan Academy pupils, as there's other 3 pupils do not have anyone in quintile 1, so you're right. So yes, you're absolutely right with that.
So that's that clarified, but Annan Academy per se is 82% against a 93% in Scotland, 91%. But it draws me on to my next question, Alison. We've discussed this before. Could you give us a brief understanding of what the improvement officers do in your team. One of the ambitions in the wider education skills is to get better outcomes in the senior phase. Now, I've mentioned on several occasions that there's quite a vast variation in outcomes as in terms of SQA, and I know that's not the only indicator, but it is a strong indicator of how our secondary schools are performing in the senior phase, because if you're in the senior phase, you're looking at Nat 5s, Nat 6s, and level 7s. There is quite a difference in outcomes across the region and also within the region. And I know I've had discussions with you, but it would be useful if you could explain how your improvement officers team actually identifies where schools may need help, and how you address that, because one of our ambitions is equity, and it doesn't, across the 16 secondary schools in the region, there is quite a vast difference, and even within, compare Annandale and Eskdale with other areas, there's differences, and the 4 schools, there's differences. So I know your quality improvement officers have got a remit to try and improve that, so I would love you to explain just exactly what you're doing, because sometimes we only find out these things after a bad inspection or a good inspection. So I would like to know that we are ahead of the curve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share what we do as a team. So for all councillors, there is a quality improvement team led by myself as a quality improvement manager and Karen Bryden as a quality improvement manager. We have 2 pillars. We have one looking at equity and we have one looking at excellence. And we work with our head teachers across both primary and secondary on an annual basis. And we deliver that through what's called the Framework for Improvement. So the Framework for Improvement sets out that ambition that all young people have equity and excellence as they come through the schools in Dumfries and Galloway. What that looks like in reality as a quality improvement officer is linked with every school across Dumfries and Galloway, and that is their link officer, and they will work with that school and that head teacher and their team to drive improvement within qualifications as well as achievement as well, because they're both equally important. What the quality improvement officer does, depending on how the school is ragged, all schools are ragged by red, amber and green methodology based on the input that head teachers send to school, send to the improvement team through their standards and quality report that they do on an annual basis, as well as the school improvement plan that they do on an annual basis. As a team, as a quality improvement team, we look at standards and quality reports, we look at school improvement planning, and we look at what has gone in the past, and we look at how schools have rated themselves. We use our intelligence that we have on a school to then decide whether that school requires a green, amber or red status. A green status means that everything is working well, and we as a team as well as that school are confident they are continuing that journey to improvement. An amber school is where perhaps there's been an anomaly. It could be a spike for 1 year, or it could be there's something that's perhaps there's been a head teacher in place for a couple of years, but there's just no movement in terms of that improvement journey. An amber, and that's an amber grading. A red grading is given to a school. It could be a new head teacher. It could be because they've been stagnant with their own grading system over a number of years, and so therefore they could be given an amber grade, a red grading, grading. We then do what we call is we have a approach by design, where we then agree as a team how many visits that school will get from the quality improvement officer, that link officer. Now, every school gets 2 visits per year. The first visit is given in August, September time, and that's looking at their attainment data as well as their school improvement plan, ensuring that they're on the right tracks for that academic year. If, however, a school, and then in term 3, every school is then revisited, and that is with the quality improvement officer and at least one other. And we take a theme. We take a theme from Higgias, the framework that's set out by His Majesty's Inspectorate. And the past 3 years, we've been looking at quality indicator 2.3. That's learning, teaching, and assessment. So year 1, we looked at learning and teaching. Year 2, we looked at assessment. And this year, we looked at equity and how young people in quintiles 1 and 2, SIMD 1 and 2, and what is their provision, what are they getting from the schools. And we're also looking at their PEF funding in terms of, are we using our PEF funding properly? So every school gets a term 1 and term 3 visit, but if they're a red school or an amber school, they would have a much more supportive visit programme from our QIO, who will be looking at different aspects. So that's how the quality improvement team work with our head teachers to ensure that every school is on a journey of improvement, because that's what we are aspiring to as a local authority.
Councillor Jameson.
I'll just quickly respond. Thanks very much, Alison. I know that's a lot to take in for folk, but it gives us some reassurance that you do identify problems ahead of impact. The reason for asking is the large variation that's pretty evident when you look at the statistics, and also parental choice has become quite a big issue in the region as a whole, and the fact that you can identify problems ahead of things would give the confidence in parents not to seek another school out, because we are attempting to get equity in all schools. So that was really my motivation for asking the question, that if we're going to be if parents are going to be content with the secondary school in their catchment, then they need to have the confidence that if there is gaps, then you're on the case and they can be identified quickly, so that we have maybe less need for parents to look elsewhere for potentially a better school. So thanks very much for that input.
If I could just come back in, Councillor Jameson, the other parts of the sort of the triangle, or that sort of bringing together our improvement, we do work with our head teachers on that individual basis. We also work with all of our head teachers across primaries and secondary schools 8 times a year, where we bring them together and we are looking at that improvement journey, and that's from both the resources side as well as the school side. And in addition to that, the head teacher from Langham has shared that the secondary head teachers, they meet on a monthly basis, and they are all about raising attainment and trying to drive that improvement, not just for their own school, but for the collective 16 secondary schools across our region. And that has been very effective over the years.
Thank you very much for that. I've got Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's in relation to, and I think Councillor Driver has touched on it, but just from a different angle, it's the success measure of percentage of people who feel safe in the neighbourhood. So in Appendix 6, page 64 and 65, a little bit surprised that in 2 of the wards, Annandale South and Annandale East, the top priority is dog fouling, and it's the second top in Annandale North. You know, in Annandale South, nearly 50% of the survey responses, the main issue was dog fouling. And if you look at the community safety team in the first 6 months from April to September, only of the 336 hours in Annandale and Eskdale, there was only 12 hours on dog fouling investigations. Now, that might not be the full picture, because obviously when you're doing patrols, etc., that's one of the things you'll be monitoring for. But I know that in the improvement actions, it says that it's an issue that you're going to focus on. I'd just probably like to know, it's maybe even if the members of Annandale and Eskdale, it's maybe an action that we'd maybe like to see a summary action plan of what's going to be done going forward with regards to combating dog fouling, because it's an issue that the councillors, you know, it gets raised with councillors all the time, and so I'd probably like an action plan of the kind of measures you're going to do. You have said it's about people reporting, etc., but there's more things that we can do through additional signage, hotspot areas or patrolling them, etc., and also issuing of fines. So another question is probably, have we issued a fine in Annandale and Eskdale over the last financial year? I'll leave it at that at the moment.
Yep, Chair, I'm happy to come in on that. Thank you, Councillor Marshall, for the question. As for an action plan, yep, I'm actually happy to come up with something like that for the team to try and focus. I find that the dog fouling generally is the biggest issue. I believe that the rowdy behaviour in Annandale North being higher might just be a result of what was happening at the time when the surveys were completed. I do find that if there is an incident ongoing and people complete a survey, it can dictate obviously what they put in. You're quite right, you've kind of answered the question. The 12 hours on dog fouling investigation will just be based on if we've received an actual report from a member of the public, that's then actioning that report, answering the member of the public, erecting signage, having a look at the area. But it doesn't obviously take in the detection deterrence patrols that we do, which are obviously, if we see a dog fouling offence, we're going to issue a fixed penalty notice. If we see a litter offence, we're going to issue a fixed penalty notice. And then obviously, if we see antisocial behaviour, we're going to engage with people who would be involved in those acts as necessary, or reporting them as appropriate. An action plan to address dog fouling is absolutely something I can look into and maybe focus on, so I can come up with something, you know, and a real solid plan that you could look at. But the big thing that we find is that a lot of reports, it's people simply want the mess removed. Quite rightly, it's not nice to have any of this on your street, but without any information of who might be committing the offence, when they might be committing the offence, even what type of dog or a description of a person, it's then very difficult for us to issue fixed penalties on that. As for have we issued fixed penalties in the last 6 months, I think you'd asked. We certainly will have. I don't have the numbers to hand, so I don't want to lie to you and say we definitely have in Annandale and Eskdale. I know we definitely have throughout the region. There's a lot of work for us still to do. We're going through a complete review on our case management systems and how things are reported, which will hopefully allow the team to spend much more time than we currently do out actually on patrol and being seen within the communities. So it's all an ongoing process at the moment, but the end goal is just to be out more often to try and you know, detect or deter these offences on a very regular basis. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that comprehensive answer, Robert, and would appreciate an action plan for Annandale and Eskdale if that could be drawn up. Thanks.
Got Naomi online as well.
Thank you, Chair. My question is a bit of a two-way question. My first one is, how are you guys going to consult with young people on their view of the Respect Me policy and how they think that is working in a couple of months' time? As well, another question is, have you consulted with young people on their views of how their education is going? And is there maybe any way us as a youth council can maybe help with that, or would you guys maybe like us to help with that to get the views of young people on how they feel their education is going? Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi, for your question, or two questions really. I'm going to take the second question first, then I'll hand over to my colleague Jess Burnett, who can talk you through the Respect Me in the consultation. I know that every school, this year has been the first year that we went back to every school, primary and secondary, and carried out stakeholder surveys, which included all young people across Dumfries and Galloway about what they think of the provision of education within their school, and then what that looks like across the authority. We've got that data, and that data has been sent back to schools. What we've not done is then look at that across the authority, but certainly we have that stakeholder feedback in terms of young people and what they think of the education provision. So I'm absolutely more than happy to share that information through Youth Council to say, okay, this is what our young people are telling us, so therefore what do we need to do now? And if Jess is there, she perhaps can come back around the Respect Me consultation.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you, Naomi, for your question. We are liaising with youth work at the moment. Mark's on the call and may wish to add more there, but they have agreed to support the development of a child-friendly version of the local authority Respect Me policy. Within the policy, it explicitly states that schools will default to local authority policy as the satellite until such time as they develop their own, because obviously the context in each school can be slightly different, and the issues that present can be slightly different again. So each school has an expectation they will develop their own Respect Me policy, and within that, it should be built collaboratively, with the voice of children and young people, as well as other key stakeholders, as a key driver and evident within that policy. A number of our schools, I don't have the specific statistics, stats, are already far ahead of the game with this, and have developed those policies at school level. They may wish to make some small alignments when we get publication of the local authority policy. But again, the voice of children and young people is really important there. So to sum up, we are developing a child-friendly version of the local authority policy, and there is an expectation that schools would have their own, as well as the voice of the children and young people as co-creators of their own policy.
Happy with that, Naomi?
Yep, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Thompson online.
Thanks, Chair. So it was a few questions. I think the first one relates to the part in the Appendix 12S, and it's around basically to get an idea of what the uptake of the SDS or Careers Advisor service is, either at the parents' evenings or by self-referral. And I'm just wondering, how well is it being used? Do we have a measure of that? Do you want all the questions just now, or will it just go one by one? Chair.
You want just take that from the first one?
I'm happy to take that question, Councillor Brodie. So in terms of uptake, we don't have uptake, but I can tell you, I can share with you that SDS are at every parents' evening. They're part of that parents' evening in every school setting. In terms of how many people are attending or speaking with SDS at those parents' evenings, I don't have that information. I do wonder if that information is gathered, and if it is, I'm sure I can get that to you.
Thanks. Yes, thank you, Chair. So I appreciate there's the SDS side, but also the Careers Advisor service as well. So I think it's, you know, working in partnership. So it's just to get a sense of outwith of that, how many people are self-referring to the service on non-parents' evenings, if that makes sense.
So Careers Advisors are based in all of our schools at different times throughout. We have operating agreements with SDS, so we do have Careers Advisors in the school, and it's a drop-in service. We also have, again, a RAG system, not necessarily red, amber and green, but we have those young people who are at greater risk, that they have more opportunity to arrange appointments with Careers Advisors, but every young person from S4 to S6 can have what's called a drop-in session with Careers Advisors in their school.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay to ask another couple of questions?
Yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
So the next one I had was it's 11S, I think the metric, and it's the bullying update. So it was really, when I was reading through it, I was wondering what were the actual recommendations from the review, and will consideration of any options come to members through the likes of Education, Skills, Community Wellbeing Committee? Because there is a sort of paragraphs at the end saying there's some consideration being given and we'll take forward the recommendations, but I'm not clear from the report what those recommendations were, other than the activities that were carried out as part of the exercise.
Okay.
I would ask Jess to come in for that, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
Of course, yeah. The report that had come through with the recommendations was taken by the former safeguarding manager. I have taken this role on as an interim measure since January. So my priority was ensuring that the policies were in place and we were aligning with national expectations and guidance within this space, which I'm sure you can understand is an evolving space, particularly in relation to racial incidents. There is one at the moment of the recommendations that was we would have a full-time member of staff appointed to have oversight of bullying. Obviously, as part of the restructure we are looking at, there is no additional funding, so we need to make decisions as to where that potentially would sit. And I would imagine, although Alison, correct me if I'm wrong here, that would be something that we would present as part of the restructure, which would come to elected members. But at this stage, we haven't quite decided what would sit within that remit until we had the policy to best understand what that remit would consist of, if that makes sense.
Sense, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, no, thanks. That helps, I think, on that specific one about the dedicated role. But I think it was more about in the next steps, it's got the role would enable the recommendations from the review, to be actioned effectively. So it was really, what were the recommendations from the review? Are you able to share that, or?
Yeah, I can certainly send you a copy of that. That's not a problem. I can make that as a priority as today. What I would certainly say is the way it is written is that the understanding would be that this new role would assume the recommendations. However, I'm able to take those forward at present, as outlined today, irrespective of that. It's more about information and data gathering. So as I'd said earlier, when we kind of gave a bit of additional information, I have a meeting with all child protection coordinators around reporting and logging of bullying incidents moving forward, but more than happy to share the review and a brief update with all members and with committee following this in terms of what progress has been made in relation to each recommendation. The only one would be the appointment of a member of staff that a bit more thought needs to be put into that from ourselves.
Thanks for going to share that with us. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, no, thank you. That helps clarify. And I think it was just because the issues raised sort of says included, so presumably the ones that aren't listed there. So that'd be really helpful. Thank you. The other one was in terms of the it's 3_E6, which is the provision of digital assets that are fit for purpose. So there was in the report, it says that should be complete by the end of March. We're pretty near the end of March. So I'm just sort of wondering, is that now, have we completed that so that we've got provision of digital assets fit for purpose? Thank you.
Hello, Chair. I'm quite happy to come in on that one and take that question. I would, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you. In terms of the provision and the rollout programme, the centrally provided devices have been completed now. We still have a little bit of work to do on the additional items that schools themselves are looking to purchase and have replaced. So in terms of the actions, they are complete, but schools are looking to invest a bit more of their own DSM allocations to enhance the provision within their schools. So that they are the only bits that have still to continue, but they're effectively add-ons to those numbers.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I have one final question, Chair, with your permission.
Have you got any more questions?
Yes, just the one more.
Just one more. Yeah, well, it would be very good, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the last one is just on the 10_ER. Are those provisional allocations now confirmed? Because there was a lot of, there was a provisional allocation table to all the schools, subject to various other things, and I was just wondering if those are now the final figures. Thank you.
Do you want to come in on that one?
I think that was for Kenny Pullen to come in terms of, is it Councillor Stevenson, is it regarding staffing allocations?
Yeah, Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, Councillor Thompson, sorry. I was thinking of your first name. Sorry, Councillor Thompson.
That's okay. But no, yes, so it was just the table for the staffing allocations, yes, I think it's for each school. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Thompson, can I ask you to direct me to the page there that you're looking at?
Unfortunately, on the laptop, it just shows
page
the
17.
PDF. Is it page 17? So it just says 10_ER.
Yeah, it's page,
as the metric.
Page 70 online.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Sorry for my tardiness there and getting up to speed. Yeah, absolutely. So that was a piece of work that my team had done just around our allocation formula for secondaries, and I got some information about allocation formulas from our neighbouring local authorities just to do a bit of benchmarking. So the D&G numbers there are provisional based on enrolments, and it will be based on the census data in September when it sets the final allocation to secondary schools. But that's the best data that we have just now, and that's what head teachers are working towards. They also know that there's an element of variability and confirmation around numbers at census time, but that's a yearly process that we go through. So yeah, those are subject to confirmation at census.
No, that helps clarify. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Thanks there. I've got a question for Mark Malloy before we finish up. Obviously, we've got lots of young people living in our small towns and villages. How do we make sure that we engage with these young people as much as we can?
Thanks, Chair. I think across the whole region, and particularly within Annandale and Eskdale, we try to take a real focus to how we ensure that young people within our more rural communities are engaged in not only youth work provision but other services across the council, but specifically around our youth work provision. That members may be aware that we've got a mobile youth centre, and as part of that, that role is around taking youth work services into the heart of local communities. Because of the age of that resource now, to get allowed is to use it as a base as we go to those communities. Members had recently agreed as part of the capital programme to fund a replacement, and we've also been fortunate to secure funding, £50,000 external funding to complement our council's own funding to replace that vehicle, and that's due to happen in 27-28, and that will allow us to enhance again our delivery to our rural communities and provide an outreach service to those areas that maybe only have a small number of young people within the areas. And over and above that, again, across all our youth work provision, members may be aware that we will, as a routine, provide transportation for young people from our outlying communities in order that they can participate within the larger projects within the region as well.
Thanks very much, Mark. That's good news about the replacement mobile youth hub, which is good. So I think without any further ado, we can move to the recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance of the selected success measures and projects summarised in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 and detailed in appendices 1 to 10. Everybody happy to have scrutinised it? Yeah? So I'd just like to thank our team online who've answered our questions very professionally, and thank you for the report as well, because it's given us a lot of information local to Annandale and Eskdale, and it's really been an opportunity to get our teeth into something substantial. So thank you very much for the comprehensive report and the answers to the questions. Thank you very much. We're on to 7, Enabling and Customer Services Directorate. Here, Committee Performance Reporting. It provides a comprehensive update on the performance of the Directorate. For our consideration, it forms part of the Council's strengthened approach to localised performance management. It's designed to give members clear visibility of how key services are operating within communities. We're presenting a blend of quantitative indicators, narrative updates and progress against agreed success measure. The report enables members to scrutinise service delivery, understand emerging trends and identify areas where further focus or improvement may be required. The document highlights performance across a wide range of functions: customer services, libraries, HR, organisational development, digital transformation and welfare and financial well-being support. It also outlines the Directorate's contribution to wider Council priorities, demonstrate how local activity aligns with strategic objectives. Elaine Muir, James McDowell, Lorna Campbell and Heather Carnacan are online to answer a question or address any comments. So I'll open the floor to members for questions and comments. Anybody want to come in with a question? Is there any offers who would like to? I've got Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. On 4.8182, it's the crisis grants and community care grants section. I was just wondering, it says there that Annandale and Eskdale is about 20% of the spend, if you like. And I was just wanting to get a sense of what's that like in relation to the other parts of the region. And it does add at the end that there's likely to be sufficient funds and some carryover. Do we have a sense of what that looks like in terms of the actual amount at year end? And yeah, and just that kind of where we are in relation to the rest of the region. The second question, if you want that now, is just in terms of the number or percentage of jobs at 4.9 advertised and appointed within the 28 working days. We're still sitting below target, although it might be that there's some improvement that we can hear about. But is there anything that can help explain that figure as we move towards the target that's been set? Thank you.
2 questions to answer. Who would like to come in?
I'll come in first, Chair. Thank you regarding crisis grants. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for your question. Regarding the percentage of spend across the region, it does broadly follow what you would expect population and deprivation wise. You would expect the largest spend for crisis grants is within the Eskdale area. And then the spend across Annandale and Eskdale and Wigton is broadly the same, and obviously the Stewart area is slightly smaller, which is, as I said, expected given the population spread in those areas. With regard to this spend, obviously we monitor that on a month-to-month basis. We are looking at, with the Scottish allocation and the additional monies that we had through tackling poverty last year, and the additional top-up that came from Scottish Government towards the end of this financial year, we're looking somewhere about 350,000, I think is what we'll have left at the end of this month to carry forward into the next financial year. And the allocation we've got for the next financial year from the Scottish Government is exactly the same as what we had for the current year, excluding that additional top-up that came. So that's what we're anticipating, but obviously it'll be the middle of next week before we run the end of year figures.
Just on that point, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
So that 350k, are we tied into what that funding can be used for? Does it have to stay within those allocations and just carried forward into the next year, or could council decide to use some or part of that element for other, I suppose, addressing poverty-related issues or emergency-related issues? Thank you.
I will double check, but my understanding is it is allocated to Scottish Welfare Fund, and that's where we were expected to spend it, but I can double check that for you.
Okay, thank you.
And the second question?
I can come in and answer that, Chair, through yourself. So absolutely, it's below target there, as it says, but there's significant project underway to look at modernising the whole recruitment from start to finish, the full journey, tapping into our systems, automating as much as possible. There's already been streamlining of forms where there would have been multiple forms before. It's reduced down to sort of one form with regards to taking that forward. So it's something that's constantly reviewed and something that we'll look to modernise as we go forward. I think the other element of it within there is that there's a process within the processes that were, so redeployment comes into that recruitment policy as well with regards to making sure that we're looking after everybody that's in the redeployment grouping, just to make sure that there's opportunities for all across that group before it goes out for recruitment. So sometimes that can cause a little bit of delay as we move through that. But with regards to the modernising, it's a continuous process to modernise and streamline.
Okay, you happy with that, Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Chair. So can I just check? So does that mean we will reach that target once all these processes within processes have sort of concluded, if you like?
Apologies, switch my mic off. Yeah, it's something we'll aim to do. It's absolutely get towards that target, and by modernising, streamlining, it makes it simpler for recruiting managers, and that's ultimately what the aim is to make it as simple as possible. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got Naomi Scott online too.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, have you seen a decrease or an increase in young people getting jobs, and do you know how employers are maybe like recruiting young people to get them into work?
Right,
Chair, I can come in that, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay, James.
So, yeah, absolutely. So there's a significant piece of work happening at the moment just about a grow your own scheme within the organisation. So we're bringing services together and looking at where vacancies arise, how best to use that budget, how best to use that vacancy, and is there a grow your own model that can be used, tapping into whether it's work experience, foundation apprentices, apprenticeships, and with our colleagues on earlier there, you know, we've done some research around about that. So there's, in the region, there's 97 foundation apprenticeships, and 17 of those are within our organisation. So again, it's making sure we tap into that pipeline, making sure we tap into that resource as we move forward through recruitment. So there'll be a grow your own scheme will be introduced, and it will give managers you know, real guidance with regards to work experience, foundation apprenticeships, modern apprenticeships, graduate apprenticeships, and graduates themselves. So again, it's opening doors with regards to this organisation, in particular young people. So happy to take any further questions beyond that.
Okay, Naomi.
No, I'm happy with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillors want to come in with questions? No? Well, thank you very much for your attendance, officials, and for answering our questions. So we'll move to the recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance of the selected success measures and projects as summarised in paragraphs 3 to 4. Are we happy that we've scrutinised these reports? Yeah? Agreed? So thank you very much for those online. Thank you. We're back to skills, educated skills and community wellbeing director and an academy investment profile report by the executive director, education skills and community wellbeing. Thank the officer for presenting this today. This is one of the area committee asks that we had a report on this. So it's good to see that we've had prompt action in getting a report on this. So Lauren Foss is in teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do you have any further to add to your report, Lauren?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further to add to it, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So a question from Councillor Jimison.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Page 83, Lauren and members. Annan Academy has got £10.8 million spent since 2010. The last significant spend was something like 15 years ago, and the spends beyond that are generally speaking refurb or upgrades. I went to Annan Academy 55 years ago, and some of the classrooms haven't changed since then. And if you walk through Annan Academy, through the multiple doors in and out of the school, you walk through it, even to a layman's eye, it's needing major upgrade. My question is, has Annan Academy slipped through the net in terms of improvement of the school estate? And if so, what can we do about it? It's a pretty open question, Lan, but Annan Academy is ageing. It's suffered from the policy, which was reasonable at the time, of adding on. And from one end of the school, it's a century old, and at the other end, it's 15 years old. And many people point to the fantastic music and drama facility, which are fantastic. That's 15 years ago, before we had anything other than £1 million spent in Annan Academy. So I'm just wondering if we can accelerate or identify issues that can be remedied to give Annan Academy a boost in terms of its functionality. Thank you.
Aaron.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Jamieson. I think what's really challenging within the asset class is the level of funding that's available to invest in all of our schools. There's some reference through the report to how we've managed significant capital investment through other means. Generally, it's not through the asset class. Generally, it's either through the PPP contract that was established in 2010, or it's through strategic projects like Dumfries Learning Town or Dalbeattie, for example. The asset class funding has to support 7 secondary schools and around 90 odd primary schools. with £5 million a year, it's never going to touch any significant levels of refurbishment that we've seen in other locations. It has to be a care and repair type approach based on priority need. What I would say, and it's not contained within the report, in relation to the other 6 secondary schools, so 7 in total with Annan that sit within the asset class, it does see significant investment compared to others. Particularly, we take it back across the years, there are large numbers in there, maybe not large enough for a school of the size of Annan to do it justice and to get it up to an equitable provision. But equity is not something that asset class is able to deliver, unfortunately. I think there's some years where the level of expenditure has been £1 million, £1.5 million. There's £1 million worth of electrical works getting done just now, but go back a year, it's got £171 against it that you can see in the appendix. So it really varies across the piece. I think what we always strive to do is ensure that investment goes into the right place for the right reasons based on the condition of all of our schools. So it would be brilliant to have the funding to be able to bring all of the schools up to the same condition, but it just doesn't exist, unfortunately. So we have to take a pragmatic approach to put the investment into the right areas and address the condition elements. The only way that I think there could be a significant boost without having any massive impact on the rest of the school estate would be considering a strategic project type approach for it, but that's something that would be a member's decision to take forward. So hopefully that gives a little bit of information, Councillor Jameson. I know it's not answering the question because actually it really comes down to money to be able to deliver all of those expectations, unfortunately.
Jameson?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. That's an open and honest answer, but it doesn't, as you know, resolve the issue. Annan is falling behind, as are other schools that you have mentioned, and it's if it's not within the parameters of the system at the moment, I would like to suggest that we have a look at Annan Academy to see what can be done within the terms of the budget and your asset classes, etc. Because the electrical wiring, that doesn't really help the teachers teach the kids. Fire door upgrades, that doesn't help the education of our children or the staff. The only thing that's of significance is the music and drama facilities, and the other parts of the school are really substandard. And while understanding the restrictions that you're under, and I know that that's serious, but I think we really need to have some policy of looking at Annan Academy. How can we improve? Look at the places most in need of the school and try and do something to make it better. The Learning Plaza was a significant, it's a good example of an improvement that has made a difference. But if you go into English classes and such like, there's poor relations. And so I'd just like to raise that point. Yeah. And at some point, could we actually follow this up and look at the comparison of funding in Annan Academy with respect to need, not just they've got 10 million, other schools got such and such, but the need is greater in Annan Academy than most schools, and it's fallen behind. And we go back to parental choice. We also, how do we attract the best teachers? And with the best will in the world, they're going to apply for Dumfries High School or Moffat. We're already under pressure because of the location. So I would like some kind of initiative just to have a look at Annan Academy. What can we do within the budgets that are available to us? I know that's a broad ask, but I think it's something that the parents and the pupils and the staff would appreciate.
Just to concur with Councillor Jameson, the Annan Academy has sort of not been favoured with Annan's not been favoured with a new secondary school, where others communities have had that way forward, and quite a lot of the school now looks changed. Everything is done piecemeal, so I'm sure I'll wait till your comments. I'll let Councillor Marshall come in, and then I'll bring you back and learn.
Yeah, just a couple of points to make. I think if we go back further than the 10 years, I think at the time when we had a real look at the whole school estate, and particularly the secondaries, and around about, it must be 15 odd years ago, and at the time when some of the secondary schools were in need of new schools, at the time it was decided that Annan needed a major refurbishment, and that was to the main front of the building and the entrances in. So there's millions of pounds spent on that. But unfortunately, it wasn't as bad a condition as some of the other schools, like the Albeatty, etc., and Moffat, etc., that got new schools. So I do take on the point, part of it is in timing, and now 15 years later, Annan Academy is starting to show signs of, there's been some great work, as George mentioned, about the drama and music. That was a major capital expenditure, but it's still probably, I'm not sure if it's the first or second largest school across Dumfries and Galloway. So it is starting to show signs of wear and tear. I think one area where it misses out as well, because when you're building new schools, you also build new sports facilities, etc. And at the time, with the 3G pitch at Annan Athletic, it was thought that would actually serve an academy as well. On reflection, I think if there's one area that could or probably needs improving, it's like that potential with 3G pitch and new changing rooms, etc. Alongside where the swimming pool is. So I do think it's worth actually taking a look at what we can do to improve Annan Academy, the whole estate within that, and I'm fully aware of the financial restrictions at the moment, but at the end of the day, this is the largest school in Annandale and Eskdale, second largest or largest in the region, and it's getting to a stage now when we maybe need to have a fresh look and approach as to how we go forward for the next number of years with the Annan Academy.
Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. I think, I absolutely understand the position that local members will see at Annan Academy, and I don't think it is a reflection of secondary schools within the asset class provision. It's not the worst school in the authority. We have poorer condition secondary schools that we're looking to invest in and address issues at. Generally, what happens is, unfortunately, you have to become a poor condition school for investment to come along. So investment being there means that you're in a worse condition than others, and it's cyclical. It has to be Forth Road Bridge approach because the funding isn't there to be able to deliver everything in one go. What we have permission to do through our service committee is to invest in priority order, and that's the method that we use. So the worst condition schools are the schools that see investment. It doesn't consider need as such in terms of what's coming forward from any particular voices. It absolutely looks at the condition surveys, which are standard across all of our schools, actually across Scotland, to say that school's in worse condition than school X, therefore we need to address those elements of it. There is something about some of the language and the terminology that's being used here today, though, and I think, Councillor Jameson, just going back to that M&E parts, you're absolutely correct. Teaching staff pupils do not see the impact of that level of investment. However, it keeps the building open and it keeps it operational. Without that, it would be closed. And there is the relationship between central investment from a capital perspective to keep a building in good condition and to look in a much more suitable environment, and also then the DSM, the devolved budget responsibilities of each school, which has responsibility for painting and decorating, floor finishes, blinds, curtains, etc. And sometimes it's the redecoration part that starts to make a building look really tired. Wherever possible, wherever we are looking at investment within areas, we will address all of those elements as well. So in the existing programme that we've got just now, where we're in some of the areas that have been discussed, the art department, for example, all the ceiling tiles are getting replaced, the floor coverings are getting changed out, the walls are being painted. So where there is opportunity to bring those improvements along, we can absolutely do that. But happy to have further discussions at a local level around that collaboration of the funding solutions that are out there to try and enhance things for Annan Academy. I would just stress the point that we have a process that's agreed through our service committee that we have to honour and we have to stick to. So that would be one of the considerations within those further discussions. Thank you, Chair.
Just quickly,
Councillor Jameson.
Just very quickly. No, thanks, Lan, and I accept the challenges, and I'm not being facetious here, but just having a school with the ambition of being operational is not what we're here for. We're here to make that school as good as it possibly can be, and not just operational. I know that was, I'm picking up a word here, but you know what I mean. So I'm pleased and encouraged by the fact that we're willing to look at it, and it doesn't always take millions to improve the feeling within the school. So if we can look at some way, shape or form to improve the well-being of the pupils and the staff in the school, to give them some kind of lift, if you like, because it's tired and it's drab, and I accept other schools are the same, but we can't let it fall any further, and we need to have more aspiration than just it works. We need to make it work really well and be a nice place to go as a pupil or staff or parents. So thanks for your time, and thanks, Katrina.
No problem.
So I think we'll take you up on the offer of meeting locally with the 4 councillors, if that's okay, still on the cards, alarm. Yeah. I've got a question on the sports pitches. I think there's long overdue some investment in the sports pitches and the drainage, etc. Was this not planned for this financial year, or is it next year financial year that's taking place?
It will be next financial year, looking to target a summer holiday period. We were waiting on the fencing works and the security measures being concluded before bringing in the heavy machinery and digging up the sports pitches to put in field drains, etc., and improving the surface there. So that'll be next financial year.
I think we've exhausted that question and moved to the recommendations. Member asked to note the content of the report around the capital investment in Annandale Academy since 2010 and the future years' investment is known at this stage. So we're happy that we've scrutinised that and asked and looked at that. We're happy with that? Yeah. And thank you, Lauren, for answering our questions today. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're on to 9. Community Asset Transfer, Langham Old School, Thomas Telford Road, Langham. So this paper provides an overview of the application submitted by Langham Alliance, sets out the assessment of the request in line with our Council's Community Asset Transfer Policy and statutory responsibilities. The report outlines the background to the building's status, the community group's vision for its redevelopment, and the financial and operational considerations that have been evaluated as part of the decision-making process. It also highlights the potential benefits the proposal could bring to Langham, including opportunities for housing, community use, regeneration, and long-term sustainability. As an area committee, this is an opportunity to consider requests presented, reflect on the community impact, and provide our recommendations before the matter progresses further. Stuart Hamilton is here in the hall to answer any member questions or to address any member comments. And I'll open the floor to members for questions and comments. Councillor Mayo.
Chair, not a question, but just to lay out the background to what we're suffering, not just in Langham, but in Lower Eskdale, Canterbury as well. We have a lot of sites that can be converted into houses, but there is nobody prepared to do it. And having lost the Lorburn project that was in the making for 5 years, where that was care for the elderly and 70 houses, then it's been a disaster for the area. So the only avenue at the moment we see is private development, and that's where the old school provides one of those answers. If it can be converted into housing, then it helps the community greatly. At the moment, our young are having to leave the town, and with the development that's happening around about Carlisle, we worry even more about that. Our elderly are being farmed out across the region, and our disabled who have lived at Langham all their lives will either come into Gretna or Eastridge or somewhere else to live, because we have nothing. So that's why I'd like to commend this project, because it is vital that we start to get housing in the community to give the community a chance to develop. Because I say over the years it has lost all its businesses, and more recently, as I say, there's 400 jobs gone from Edinburgh, Woolen Mill and Border Fine Arts, and the town is desperately trying to fight back. It has 72 organisations in it. 3 or 4 of those organisations are working hard to try and redevelop the community, and I think the school for this purpose is vital. So I would just recommend the report to yourselves, and I hope that it can be taken forward.
Okay. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, I'm happy. you know, agree with what Dennis said there, the amount of work that's went into this over the last number of years. First of all, the funding was withheld from South of Scotland Enterprise Agency, and there's a lot of other issues that are going on there. So happy to agree with the recommendations and the suggestions that Dennis says.
Stuart, you want to say anything on it?
Nothing particular to add to the content of the report. Members are asked to look at the, there's three options in terms of what the committee can refer to the Service Committee as the Area Committee's recommendation. So they're presented at paragraphs 4.1 and 5, with option 1 being to transfer without conditions, option 2 to transfer with conditions, or option 3 would be not to transfer. And it's that once you consider your recommendations, it is the 2.4 is the final point where you recommend the Area Committee's recommendation up to E&I, which will go in June. Thank you.
I think we can cover the first 3 points first, then you can come in the fourth one, I think.
The suggestion would be to go for item 2, Chair, and with the condition that at least £500,000 of the required capital funding is secured within 12 months before the transfer.
Yeah, happy saying that.
Any other conditions we should be considering, Stuart, apart from the capital?
It's entirely in members' hands in terms of the conditions that you want to recommend up to the Service Committee. The options are presented there, and it's entirely at your discretion as to what the Area Committee would consider as their recommendation for the Service Committee to determine.
So if we just agreed Councillor Mail's suggestion, then go to the Service Committee, and if they want other conditions, they'd have to put it on. Is that correct?
The decision, the ultimate decision sits with the E&I Committee, and the recommendation from this Area Committee today will be presented to that committee in June. It will be for members of that committee to determine the final outcome of the asset transfer request.
Okay. We're happy to go to the recommendations. Mr. Rybrow.
Just clarify that it's option 2 rather as recommendation 2. Yeah.
We'll go through the recommendations. We're asked to consider Langham Alliance's transfer request as laid out in stage 2. We've considered it. 2, consider the outcome of the Office assessment of the request in relation to the Council's requirement to meet best value. Well, we've done that. And note the outcome of the social value assessment of the proposed transfer as detailed at section 4.11. And I think we've done that. But 4, consider and agree an option from those listed at section 4.15. So we're agreeing option 2, which you want to read it with the following condition, which you want to read again, Dennis?
With the condition that at least £500,000 of the required capital funding is secured within 12 months.
But Councillor Thompson, who wants to come in online?
Thank you. I mean, I'm happy to support this option 2. I just wanted to check if it's okay, Chair, through yourself, the standard conditions at 4.14.3. So would we have to effectively say yes, we'll include all that resolution of title defects, etc., and comply with subsidy control? Are they taken as standard, or are they? These form part of the additional ones?
Happy to try and answer that. We do have Stephen Whitelaw on the call, I believe, if he wants to come in. But the standard conditions, as outlined at 4.14.3, would be included as standard in terms of when the conveyancing was done. But if Stephen Whitelaw wanted to come in just to answer Councillor Thompson's question, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's absolutely correct. The standard conditions are incorporated in your decision and in the decision of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee. And what we're talking about in terms of additional conditions is anything beyond those, such as funding, for example, that you've outlined. Thank you.
We're agreeing the normal conditions plus the extra one, which about the £500,000 capital. Have you got a copy of that, Claire?
Yes, I've got that noted. Thank you, Chair. That there's an extra condition that there should be at least 500,000 capital funding of the required capital funding secured within 12 months of transfer. Thank you.
So we're all happy with that?
Chair, sorry, I was just wanting to come back in after that response from our solicitor, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have that sort of condition on the funding, but it would be, you know, if they were like at 490 and a year was up. So I'm just sort of thinking, if there's reasonable progress towards that, I think obviously hopefully there'll be some flexibility if it was shown that, yeah, they might be just about there, but they need another month or something like that. You know, so do we have to be particularly strict about that, or is it more just to say a reasonable amount of the funding's been secured rather than being specific? I know it's up to members, but I just didn't want to sort of scupper the project in case they got close but not quite.
Councillor Mail, you want to come in?
I'm sure it's quite flexible, Chair. I mean, I think that this is a sort of arbitrary figure, but I'm not sure if it was within 10 or 20,000 of that, then it would not stop the project. And as I say again, it's up to the parent committee. They may decide to throw that out. We don't know.
Who wants to come in?
I was just going to say you could make that flexibility clearer in your decision that you're putting forward to allow for that. Thank you.
So we can include in flexibility in it, Councillor Thompson, in the recommendation. Claire's going to make sure that that is covered in the recommendation. Okay?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Everybody happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. Addressing depopulation, Annandale and Eskdale report by Executive Director, Enabling and Customer Services. The report sets out the most recent data on population change and highlights the key factors driving decline. As an area committee, this is a valuable opportunity for us to consider the evidence presented, reflect on the implications for Annandale and Eskdale, and discuss how we can support the ongoing work to address depopulation. And readers and teams to answer any members' questions or address any members' comments. Andy, do you have anything that you would like to add before I open the floor to members for questions and comments?
Nothing further to add at the moment. Happy to go to questions.
An introductory one from Councillor Jimison.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the paper. I'm going to be a wee bit grumpy here. The ambition of this area committee is to look at Annandale and Eskdale in particular, and having read the full report for full council, there's not a lot of Annandale and Eskdale specific stuff in here. And I think I'm right in saying that any of the consultation was done with people in the West. I know there's a limit to what the budget can cover in terms of that. But if you look at other papers on the rural depopulation, etc., there is a significant weighting on what is rural, urban, etc., and Annandale and Eskdale, even within Annandale and Eskdale, there's a difference in that context. So my only ask really is that we have something more specific for Annandale and Eskdale and within the Annandale and Eskdale region, because we know that what affects Langham might not affect Lockerbie, what affects Annan might not affect Eastriggs, things like that. And then there's the rural villages where elderly folk might move towards a larger conurbation for services, etc. Young people might move out of the area, etc., because the transport's better in the east and they can come up and down. So it's just getting a little bit more context into Annandale and Eskdale where that depopulation is and the balance and the nuances. You know, Annan might be getting bigger because elderly folk are coming to live in Annan because the doctors are there and things like that. So my ask is that it's more specific, and I know that takes more time and resource, but the paper here is limited in its impact in Annandale and Eskdale. Thank you.
Want to come back on that, Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jameson. You're absolutely right. Obviously, we did conduct obviously the limited funding we had for the research, and we identified 3 different types of communities, which is rural, urban, or small urban, should I say, in Lincolnshire, rural in Glencans, and then coastal communities in the Rins. We did focus mainly on the West because West has a sharper decline on in population numbers. That's not to say we try to look at the different types of communities to see what sort of associations we can apply across the region. As you've sort of rightly picked up in relation, there's a paper tomorrow to full council, and that sort of sets out the next sort of programme, which is looking at how we apply that learning across each of the communities across the region. And that would be then more specifically looking at some of those places that have got place plans, those sort of small, you know, how we can apply that learning to other areas across the region. And you're quite correct. There is a challenge within the region that the east is very much different to the west. Central, once again, has different, as I mentioned, about the coastal and urban challenges. So it will be looking at sort of the different types of communities, what position those communities are in, because through the learning we identified the 6 factors which do play a significant role. And then see which communities where we can possibly make intervention, or at least understand where intervention might be possible. Admittedly, obviously that's challenging with the limited finances that we may have, but then there's, as you say about tomorrow's sort of meeting, there's that sort of alignment of strategies about what work we're doing elsewhere within the organisation that might help, such as the housing discussion. And I picked up obviously on the previous item, Councillor Mell's discussion on the Langham Old School and the opportunity that possesses. I think that is sort of all I've got to add on that one there.
It's recognise the limitations of that budget, and your response has been just what I would expect, that we need to look at each area in its own context. So thanks very much.
Sorry, apologies, I should have come back in there. Just to say, in relation to the localised data is only available up to sort of 2021, as you'll note from the report. We're hopeful at the end of May that sort of more localised data up to 25, you know, coming from the census, that'll help us understand that sort of local level community sort of impact, and specifically with towns.
That'll be helpful when that's available. Anybody else want to come in with questions or points? No, we can go to the recommendations then. Members are asked to 1, note the progress on the addressing depopulation research at paragraphs 4.1 to 4.14. 2, consider the issues relating to depopulation and population change most relevant to Annandale and Eskdale from this research outlined at paragraphs 4.17 to 4.20 and within the appendix. And 3, note, a vote on this matter is scheduled to be considered at the Fishing Galway Council tomorrow. So I'm happy to note, consider and note 1, 2 and 3. Okay, thank you very much. 11 is local place plan update and registrations. Report by Head of Economy and Environment. The Langham Academy Police Plan reflects extensive community engagement and sets out clear local priorities, covering housing, health and social care, children, young people, business and economic development, tourism, infrastructure, energy, nature and environment, sports, leisure and outdoors, heritage, arts and culture. Fraser James and Shona McCoy are on teams to answer any member questions or address any members' comments. I'll open the floor to members. Councillor Drybrough.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and obviously there's a lot of thanks to be put on to the local population who have been doing quite a bit of work on this. I've read through this, and there's a lot of meetings being had, there's a a lot of conversations being had, a lot of arguments being had, especially between the two particular areas. But I think what they've come up with here is ideal for that particular area, and I would like to agree the recommendations that are in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Mail.
Yeah, just to support Councillor Driver, while the Alliance did the work, it has been obviously shared with the community councils, and the community councils kept involved, and they're both fully aware and fully support the work that's been done on this. So again, just to support Councillor Driver's recommendation.
So it's a very good report, very good place plan, so, and it's got the support of local members, so I think we can go straight to the recommendations. Unless people online would like to comment. Shona or Fraser?
No, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, all happy? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for your attendance then, officers. So members asked to note the Langham and Canonbury Districts LPP supporting statement, Appendix 2, demonstrate that local place plan legislative requirements have been met, and agree that the Langham and Canonbury Districts local place plan, Appendix 1, is registered by the Council as local place plans and are added to the local place plan register on the Council's web page. And 3, note the progress being made by the community bodies have expressed an interest in preparing a local place plan as set out in paragraphs 4.5. So we're happy to note, agree and note 1, 2 and 3. Thank you very much. And we're on to 12. Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee Discretionary Budget Monitoring Report 25-26, report by Head of Thriving Communities. So the paper provides an overview of how the Area Committee's discretionary budget has been allocated over the course of the year and sets out the outcomes achieved through the projects and organisations we have supported. This is an opportunity for members to review the impact of our investment, reflect on the value it brings to our communities, and consider any learning that may help shape future funding decisions. So Jamie Nicholson is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. I'll open it, unless James gets in, Tad, I'll open the floor to members. Jamie?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to highlight there is a number of sports grants that don't have a monitoring report attached to that. Just like to highlight the reason for this is due to the timescales that they were actually issued to the applicant. So I can circulate the monitoring report once it's actually been received. We've given them to the 31st of March to submit these. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, on to the questions. Councillor Driver.
Yeah, there's no question, more a comment, Chair, than anything else. Obviously, we get this every year, and the amount of people that it benefits is, again, a large number of people, even with the missing reports. But I think this has been quite a good one. I think we scrutinise and put governance into this as best we could. So happy to agree with the recommendations.
Any other comments or questions? No? So we'll move to the recommendations. Naomi Scott, you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a little question. Do you know how many young people or youth groups are accessing the sport grant? Thank you.
Sorry. Can I just clarify, was that how many people were accessing the sports grants, Naomi?
How many young people are accessing the grant or youth groups?
The sports grants specifically, they are open to clubs and individuals, so there's a varied range of applications in there, some from a varied variety of sports and activities that have been accessible to the youth of Annandale and Eskdale. With regards to the discretionary budgets, things like the riding of the marches and the galas, there's obviously lots of youths or associated with the activities that participate in those. Does that answer your question, Naomi? Sorry.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other members want to come in? No, we can move on to the recommendations then. We're asked to note the performance monitoring information from projects initiatives that receive support from the Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee in 25-26, detailed in the appendix. To note that a significant number of citizens have benefited from the delivery of key local projects initiative in that local Annandale and Eskdale area. And 3, agree to carry forward the underspends from discretionary grants as outlined in paragraph 4.6. We have to note and agree. Okay. We're on to 13, Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee Programme of Community Engagement Update. Report by Head of Thriving Communities. Our next report provides us with the opportunity to review the community engagement undertaken in Annandale and Eskdale to date and the further planned activity for the remainder of 2026. Stuart and Hamilton is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. I'll open the floor to members for questions and comments. Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks very much, Chair. And again, it's just one of those ones where we said we were going to improve something about a year ago, and what I see here is that we have actually improved again. So very pleased with the recommendations, and the Youth Council elected member locality meeting note is really good. So just happy to agree the recommendations.
Any other questions or comments? No, we can go to the recommendations then. Members are asked to note the topics agreed by the Committee for Community Engagement sessions as detailed in paragraph 4.4. To review the feedback from the community engagement event held with youth councillors outlined within the appendix, which we have done, it's in the report. And 3, review the arrangements being progressed for the remaining programme for 2026, and we'll see that programme come to fruition over the rest of the year. So happy to have noted, reviewed and reviewed. On to 14, Langcombe Good Property Assets. Apparently Councillor Mail and Councillor Greaves spent all the money between them and you weren't there. Report by Assistant Director of Transport. So provides an overview of all identified common good assets in the Langcombe Good portfolio, including details on the lease or tenure, condition repairs undertaken during 2025 and the overall value for each property. Andrew Maxwell is in Teams. Colin Freeman is in Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. I'll open the floor to members for questions and comments. Any Councillor Mail?
Just to add that I think it's sad that the old town council did spend its common good and left nothing for the incoming councils to have something there, and just thank the council for looking after all the properties and that so well during the years.
Sorry, we'll go to the recommendations. We're asked to note 1, the properties that form the Langcombe Good Asset Portfolio as detailed at paragraph 4.1, and 2, the tenure, valuation, condition and repairs information for each asset as detailed at paragraph 4.1. Happy to do this, to note these 2 things, and thank Colin for being here to answer questions. I think he'll be here on the next one as well. So, which is 15, Moffat Common Good Property Assets. Like item 14, this provides us an overview of all the identified common good assets in Moffat Common Good Portfolio. Again, the report includes details on the lease of tenure, condition repairs undertaken during 2025 and the overall valuation for each property. Andrew's here again. I'll open the floor to members for questions and comments. Nobody want to speak? Councillor McGregor.
Yeah, it's just to echo Councillor Mayall's comments around Langham and Moffat's obviously in a very similar situation. It doesn't actually have an active common good. So thank you to the council for looking after the various buildings in Moffat.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in? No, so we'll go to the recommendation. Members have to note the properties that form the Moffat Common Good Fund asset portfolio as detailed at paragraph 4.1, and 2, the tenure valuation condition and repairs information for each asset as detailed at paragraph 4.1. Okay, is happy to note these two things?
Before we go into the next one, which is Beckburn Wind Farm, I'm actually the chair at the moment this year, but we don't get anything for it, and we don't even get mileage for it or out that. So it's not been. I asked Vlad Valianti to put this into a report almost 18 months ago, so I'm swithering whether to declare an interest, or because I'm not getting anything out of it, do I just say I don't?
Matter for you to determine, but you might want to make a statement of connection.
Statement of connection?
I'll declare a statement of connection.
If you can put that in the minutes, Councillor Ryber has made a statement of connection. We've dealt with the Moffat Common Good Fund because we've asked to note the properties that form that Moffat Common Good and the tenure valuation conditions and repairs. So we've done that. Yeah.
Can I just make a recommendation that we do add them to the outside bodies, and that we ask Councillor Driver to carry on for a further year as chair?
Yeah, we've just, well, I haven't introduced it yet, so, but you just need to say ditto when we come to that. Appointments to outside bodies, Cumbria Community Foundation, Beckburn, Wind Farm, Community Fund, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. So members asked whether the Beckburn Wind Farm Community Fund should be added to the Council scheme of representations. And Fraser Davis and the team is answering a member questions or address any member comments. And I'll go back to Councillor Mayle.
Well, Chair, I think we should add Beckburn to our outside bodies, and I suggest that Councillor Driver be asked to carry on for the last year of the Council to be the chair.
Suppose we add this to the scheme of delegation and that Councillor Driver takes the nomination. Councillor Driver?
Yeah, just to say that there's 4 community councils within the Annandale and Eskdale ward that benefit from the wind farm, which is Canonbay, Springfield and Gretna Green, Gretna and Rigg, and Kilpatrick Fleming. I'm
also told that there's a section of East Riggs within it, so, which forms the outer boundary. So
there's a 10 kilometre and a 5 kilometre things, and as long as it benefits somebody within the 5 kilometres, or the 10 kilometre one can be paid out.
Thank you. So are you happy to take the nomination? Yeah. Okay. So we're agreeing that we'll consider the request from Beckburn Wind Farm Community Fund to be added to the Council scheme of representation outside bodies, and we've agreed that we should recommend that to. We should agree that. And subject to decision, agree to appoint Councillor Dryborough as the member. You've got that clear?
Yes.
Oh, that was good. This one's a good one. Number 17. Any other business deemed urgent by the chair due to need for decision? We don't have any urgent items, so thank you all very much for attendance. We have got lunch, have we? It's lunch?
For members that have ordered lunch, there is lunch there.
Right. Have I ordered lunch? So there is lunch for those who've ordered it. So okay, thank you very much for attending and for your participation.